David couldn't stop thinking about the ring. It hadn't been there earlier, he was sure of it. Not when she shook his hand. Not when she bent over the engine. So why did he only notice it now? It wasn't flashy, a simple silver band, no diamonds, no shine, but it sat where one kind of ring always did. He shook off the thought, climbing back into the Mustang. The engine turned over roughly, but alive. Ellie was already gone, a trail of dust behind her old pickup truck. Something about her lingered, though, not just the ring. The way she spoke, the way she worked. She didn't ask for anything. She didn't boast. She didn't flirt, either. Most women David met in the city wore charm like perfume, calculated, deliberate. Ellie had none of that. She was just her. The Mustang wheezed its way toward Carter's garage, barely holding steady. It was nestled between a hardware store and a feed shop, its metal sign half rusted, and the building itself leaning like it had given up on standing straight a long time ago. Still, the smell of gasoline and old oil was comforting. Inside, Ellie stood at a battered workbench, sorting tools. She looked up, smirked slightly. She made it. Barely. David chuckled, stepping out. Mind if I hang out while you take a look? Sure, long as you don't mind the smell of transmission fluid. He leaned on a post and watched as she moved. She was fast, efficient, but patient with the old car. Every now and then, she hummed under her breath something old, like a tune from a dusty record. He didn't want to interrupt it, didn't want to break the strange calm in this grease-stained little bubble. So, you always fix strangers' cars for free? He asked after a while. Ellie wiped her hands on a red rag. Depends. Sometimes strangers become something else. He raised an eyebrow, and sometimes they don't. She shrugged. Most times they drive away and forget you ever existed. David studied her face. She was trying to sound nonchalant, but there was pain hiding in her words. She caught him, looked in and quickly busied herself with a socket wrench. You from around here? He asked. Born here, raised by my uncle after my mom left. Never met my dad. She said it so casually that he almost didn't catch the weight in her voice. This place is all I've known. Ever want to leave? All the time. Then, why haven't you? Ellie paused, the wrench still in her hand. She didn't look at him. Some things keep you stuck, even when the engine's ready to go. David nodded slowly, not pushing. He was good at reading people. Years of high-stakes meetings had trained him to pick up on silences, the pauses that meant more than words. He let a moment pass. I know I don't look like it, she said suddenly, but I used to dream of opening my own garage. One that doesn't smell like mice and death. One where I hire kids like me, girls who don't want to be waitresses or run off to nowhere. Why haven't you? Because dreams cost more than broken wrenches and half-paid bills. Her honesty stunned him. In Chicago, people build walls. Here, this girl handed him her story without asking for anything in return. Ellie, he said gently, you've got more skill than half the guys I've hired in my life. She looked at him for the first time, really looked. Yeah, well, skill doesn't pay rent. Their eyes locked, and for a moment, something unspoken passed between them, a flicker of understanding, maybe even admiration. But just as quickly, Ellie looked away, slipping the ring on her finger again. It hadn't been there earlier. He was right. She had taken it off, hidden it, but now, with his questions inching too close, she'd put it back on like armor. David felt something shift inside him. This wasn't just a broke mechanic in a small town. There was something she was hiding. Someone, maybe. And that ring wasn't just jewelry. He didn't know what it meant yet, but he was going to find out. David didn't leave the garage that afternoon. Not right away. Not even when the Mustang was back to purring like it had just rolled off the assembly line. There was something about Carter's garage and, more precisely, something about Ellie that made him hesitate. She tried to act like his presence didn't faze her, but every time she caught him watching her, she'd get quieter, more careful. It was clear she didn't trust easily, and he didn't blame her. In places like this, trust wasn't given, it was earned, often painfully. So what do you do? She finally asked, her voice muffled as she slid under another car. I work in investment strategy, he said, casually leaning on a post wall. Street stuff, numbers, suits, long hours. Nothing as exciting as changing spark plugs. Ellie's laughter echoed from beneath the car. Exciting? You must be bored out of your mind. Then he smiled. Maybe that's why I'm still here. Her hands stilled. He saw her legs tense under the creeper before she rolled herself out and wiped her forehead with the back of her arm. "Look, I don't know what you think this is, but it's not anything," David interrupted, raising his palms gently. "You helped me out. I'm just making conversation. If it feels like more than that, tell me." Ellie narrowed her eyes. She studied him for a moment, probably used to people pretending to be kind with strings attached. Finally, she sighed and leaned back against the tire. "Sorry," she said. "Old habits. People show up, act nice, then leave. I guess I just brace for that." David nodded. "That ring on your finger, someone make you feel like that before?" She looked down, almost like she forgot it was there. Her fingers instinctively curled over it. "It's not what you think," she said softly. "Then what is it?" Ellie turned her head away. "Just a reminder." She stood up before he could press further. "You hungry?" she asked clearly, trying to change the subject. He hadn't realized how long he'd been there until she mentioned it. The sun had shifted low, casting long shadows through the garage. His stomach gave a low growl in response, making them both laugh. "There's a diner down the road," Ellie said, grabbing her jacket. "Basic stuff. Burgers, bad coffee, but the fries are legendary." "I'll take it," David said, "as long as the coffee's not as bitter as you." She shot him a playful glare. "Careful, I've got tools sharper than your jokes." They drove separately. David followed her rusty pickup, watching as it coughed and bounced down the road, like it might fall apart any second. In contrast, his Mustang glided now thanks to her. He found himself smiling as he drove Dot at the diner. They slid into a booth by the window. Ellie ordered without even looking at the menu. David followed her lead. The waitress seemed to know Ellie well, calling her baby girl and ruffling her hair as if she was still 10 years old. Ellie didn't talk much while they waited for food. She stared out the window, fingers tapping an uneven rhythm on the table. David let the silence linger until it felt natural, then gently asked, "You ever think about leaving this place?" "All the time," she said, still watching the passing cars. "But thinking and doing are two very different things. What's stopping you?" She hesitated. Him. David felt something drop in his chest. The man from the photo. She didn't look at him. "You noticed that, huh?" "I notice a lot. You're not wearing that ring like it's something you're proud of." Ellie finally turned her gaze to him. "It's complicated." Then uncomplicated. "I'm not asking you to explain yourself. But if you're scared, if someone's hurting you, I'm not scared." She cut in quickly. Too quickly. He didn't believe that for a second. She glanced away, swallowed hard, then whispered, "I was engaged. His name's Cole. He was charming at first, then possessive, controlling. One day he pushed me. Then he apologized so hard, I almost believed him. That was the first time. It wasn't the last." David's jaw tightened. "I left him," she said. "But it's a small town. He's still around, still watching. I keep the ring on so he doesn't start asking questions. Thinks I'm waiting, that he still owns a part of me." David's voice was quiet, but he doesn't. Her eyes met his, and for the first time that day, she looked tired, worn, but in that exhaustion, there was a flicker of defiance. "No," she said, "he doesn't." The next morning, the town was quiet, the way only small towns could be. The streets were still, birds chirped from the wires overhead, and the air smelled faintly of pine and gasoline. David couldn't stop thinking about what Ellie had said. The night before, Cole, even the name left a bitter taste in his mouth. He didn't know the man, but he didn't need to. He'd seen enough pain in Ellie's eyes to know who he was. A coward in the skin of a man, hiding behind charm and control. David had known men like that in boardrooms, men who smiled with knives behind their teeth. But Ellie wasn't a victim. Not in the way people pitied. She was surviving, day by day, with grease on her hands and a ring on her finger that wasn't love, but armor. David decided to stop by the garage again. He told himself it was just to check on the car, maybe offer to pay properly this time. But deep down, he knew he just wanted to see her again. When he arrived, the shop door was already rolled up, the Mustang parked in the corner. Ellie stood over another car, this time a busted-up SUV, elbows deep in an engine. She didn't see him right away. Her ponytail was messier than yesterday, her sleeves rolled high, sweat shining on her neck in the morning sun. "Back so soon?" she asked without looking up. David smiled. "The coffee wasn't bitter enough. Figured I'd try my luck here again." She laughed softly. "Still working? You city types really don't know when to leave well enough alone, huh?" He leaned against a tool chest. Only when something or someone is worth not leaving. That made her pause, her hands slowed. But then she grabbed a wrench and kept going. You're not staying here, David. People like you never do. He didn't argue. He knew the truth in her words. But he also wasn't ready to leave not. Yet as she shifted to grab another tool, something slid out from under a stack of rags on the workbench. A photograph dotted fluttered to the floor like a falling leaf. David bent to pick it up before she could stop him. It was old, a little worn at the edges. In it, Ellie stood beside a man, taller than her, buzzed hair, confident grin. His arm was slung too tightly around her waist. Both wore matching rings, shiny and new. But it wasn't a happy picture. Not to David. Ellie's smile didn't reach her eyes. She looked trapped. She reached out quickly, snatching the photo from his hands. Give it back, she said, voice sharp. David let go without resistance. Sorry, I didn't mean to. It's nothing, she cut in. Just old memories. He watched her shove it into a drawer like she was trying to erase it. Does he still come around? She hesitated. Sometimes, not often. Just enough to remind me he's still there, still watching. Have you told anyone? What would be the point? This town doesn't listen to girls like me, especially not when the guy's daddy owns half the farmland around here. David folded his arms. They'd listen to me. She looked at him, surprised. Why would you care? Because someone should. Because you don't deserve to look over your shoulder every day. Ellie's expression softened, but only a little. You don't know what he's like when he's angry, when he's losing control. David's voice was steady. Then it's time someone took that control away from him. The room fell quiet. Ellie looked down at her hands that fixed engines and protected her heart, hands that still trembled sometimes when old ghosts passed by. Then, with a deep breath, she reached into her pocket and slowly pulled off the ring. It was the first time David saw her without it. She placed it on the workbench, beside a jar of bolts, like it was just another broken piece of machinery. I don't know if I'm brave, she whispered, but I'm tired. He stepped forward, close, but not too close. Sometimes tired is where bravery begins. Ellie didn't say anything, but for the first time, she didn't look like she was carrying the weight alone. Outside, a truck passed. By she didn't flinch. Not this time. The sun was beginning to dip below the rooftops of the sleepy town when David knocked on the side door of Carter's garage. Ellie had mentioned she worked late, but he wasn't there for a repair. This time, he was hoping for something else. Didn't expect you again today, Ellie said, wiping her hands on a towel. Her eyes were tired but calm, her voice quieter than usual. The ring still sat on the bench from that morning and was thinking about what you said earlier. David replied, stepping inside, about being tired, about bravery. She smirked faintly. Let me guess, you came to lecture me over a plate of fries again? No, he said. This time I'm inviting you out. No garage talk, no Mustang, just dinner, as friends. Ellie hesitated, her lips pressed into a thoughtful line. I'll even let you pick the booth, he added, teasing gently. That earned a real smile. Fine, she said, but if they mess up my fries, I'm blaming you. 20 minutes later, they sat across from each other at the same booth as before. But this time the air between them felt warmer, familiar. David noticed the way she tucked her hair behind her ear when she was nervous, how she scanned the diner when she walked in almost by habit. They ordered the same meals. As they waited, they chatted about silly things. The worst cars Ellie had worked on, the weirdest clients David had met, the odd towns between here and the next big city. But midway through the meal, something shifted. Ellie was reaching for her glass when her jacket sleeve slipped back. David saw it. The ring, not the silver one from before. This one was gold, thinner, hidden under her sleeve like a secret. His brow furrowed. Ellie. She froze, then slowly followed his gaze to her hand. I thought you took it off, he said gently. I did. Then why? I don't wear it for him, she interrupted. Her voice was low, her hands trembling slightly. This one was my mom's. David leaned back, unsure. You said your mom left. Ellie nodded. She did. But before she did, she left this ring behind. Told me it was her reminder that if life ever tried to break me, I should wear it and remember that walking away was possible, that survival was possible. She swallowed, then looked up. Her eyes were glassy but not crying. After I took off Cole's ring this morning, I felt naked, like something was missing. But I realized it wasn't him. It was something good. something that reminded me I have a choice. So I put this one on. David's heart ached. You don't need any ring to prove you're strong. Maybe not, she said, but this one, it's not about someone owning me. It's about where I come from, what I've lived through. The conversation settled into silence for a few moments. Then Ellie asked, why are you still here? David, you fixed your car days ago. You said you had business back in Chicago. He exhaled. I did, but then I met a girl who knew more about spark plugs than most Ivy League grads know about themselves. A girl who had grease on her hands but fire in her soul, and I realized I wasn't done here yet. Ellie didn't look away this time. She let him see her, the raw, brave, and bruised parts. You don't owe me anything, she said. I know, David replied, but maybe I want to offer something anyway, even if it's just time, even if it's just listening. Ellie smiled, small, uncertain, but real. Then the bell over the diner door jingled. David's smile faded as he saw the man who walked in. Tall, broad, confident in a way that wasn't earned, just inherited. His boots thudded heavily across the floor as his eyes scanned the room. Ellie stiffened across from him. Cole, she whispered. David's eyes narrowed. The man's gaze landed on their booth, and he started walking toward them. Cole stopped at the edge of the booth, like he owned the place. The low din of the diner seemed to dull around them, the hum of conversation fading into a tense, crackling silence. David stayed seated, but squared his shoulders. Ellie didn't move. Ellie, Cole said smoothly, flashing a grin that didn't reach his eyes. Didn't expect to see you out tonight. His voice was calm, the kind of calm that made David's blood pressure rise. Ellie's jaw tensed. It's a free town, Cole. He tilted his head. Sure it is. Just surprised, that's all. You usually keep to the garage. His gaze slid to David. Guess we're trying new things. David opened his mouth, but Ellie placed a quiet hand on his wrist, a signal. Don't, not yet. Cole, you don't belong here, she said firmly. Go home. Cole's smile faded slightly. We used to come here all the time, remember? Your order hasn't changed. He turned to the waitress, who hovered nearby uncomfortably. Get her the usual. Donna. She wanted box to go. Donna didn't move. She looked to Ellie. Ellie gave a small shake of her head. No, she said. I won't take anything from you. Cole's hands tightened into fists, then relaxed again just as quickly. So it's like that now. You think you're better than me because you fixed some city guy's car. She didn't just fix it, David said calmly. She saved it, something I'm guessing you never knew how to do. Cole turned his full attention to David. You've got a smart mouth suit, but you don't know a thing about her. I know enough, David replied evenly. Enough to see she's not afraid of you anymore. Cole chuckled, low and bitter. Afraid? She should be afraid of the mess she's making, running around town like she's single, like she didn't make promises. I didn't promise to live in fear, Ellie snapped. I didn't promise to let you put your hands on me. I didn't promise to become small just so you could feel big. A few heads turned from other booths. A couple near the door whispered. The waitress stepped back quietly. Cole leaned closer, voice low but venomous. You think hiding behind some stranger's gonna keep you safe? David stood up slowly, blocking Cole's path. If you don't leave now, I'll call the sheriff. I'll make sure you never get near her again. You don't belong here, Cole growled. Neither do you. David shot back. For a second, it looked like Cole might swing. His fist curled again, his chest puffed. But Ellie stood too, calm but unyielding. And with that, something shifted. She wasn't trembling. She wasn't shrinking. She stood between them, not behind anyone. I'm not hiding, she said softly. Not from you, not anymore. Cole's eyes flicked to the gold ring on her hand, the one that wasn't his. He didn't understand it, but he knew it wasn't about him, and that burned more than anything. He scoffed, stepped back, and looked. Around the diner, no one was supporting him. Not this time. I'll see you around, he muttered, voice dark. No, Ellie replied. You won't. Cole turned and left. The bell above the door rang like a bell of freedom. Final cold air rushed in behind him and was gone as quickly as it came. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then the diner's quiet hum returned, cautiously, like a room. Exhaling after holding its breath, David looked at Ellie. She was still standing, hands at her sides, eyes dry, but her shoulders slumped slightly, like 1,000 pounds had been lifted. You okay? He asked gently. No, she said, but I will be. David reached for her hand. She let him take it, and this time, the ring didn't feel like a shield. It felt like a story, one that was just beginning to turn the page. The next morning, Ellie returned to the garage before the sun even touched the roof. The air was still, cool, and smelled of dew and rust. Everything looked the same, but inside her, something had changed. Cole had come and gone, but she didn't shake this time. She didn't shrink. She'd looked him in the eyes and stood her ground, and for the first time in years, she hadn't needed to explain, apologize, or pretend she was fine. She was done with pretending. David showed up just after 9, coffee in hand. He didn't say anything at first. He just handed her the cup and leaned against the workbench like he belonged there. She took it without a word, but gave him a nod, grateful, quiet. "You slept?" he asked. "Barely," she said, "but I'm okay, just trying to figure out what's next." David took a sip of his own coffee. "You don't have to figure it out today." Ellie set her cup down, her eyes drifting to the photograph in the drawer. She pulled it out and stared at it, the smile that never reached her eyes, the ring that no longer sat on her hand, the man who could no longer control her. She took the photo, walked over to the garage's small trash bin, and dropped it in. Just like that. It wasn't a dramatic gesture, no fire, no tearful speech, just a quiet, final decision. David smiled. That felt good. Ellie nodded. "Yeah, really good." She turned to him, her expression firmer now. "I want to do something for myself. I'm tired of fixing everyone else's messes and never building anything that's mine." David's eyes lit up. "Tell me." "I want to start my own garage, not just a one-person shop. A real place, clean tools, real lift systems, a waiting area that doesn't smell like burned rubber. And I want to hire girls like me, ones who never got the chance. Train them, give them work they can be proud of." David grinned. "That's brilliant, and long overdue. I've thought about it for years," Ellie admitted. "But Cole always said I couldn't do it. Said I was just some broke girl, with too much attitude and not enough brains." "You've got more grit than anyone I've ever met," David said, "and I can help." She raised an eyebrow. "Help how?" "I've got contacts. A friend of mine runs a grant program for women starting vocational businesses in rural towns. I can make a call." Ellie hesitated. "I don't want to be a charity case." "David, you won't be. You'll be a client, a partner, a woman who's earning what she already deserves." She studied him carefully, unsure whether to believe in something that sounded almost too good. But when she looked into his eyes, she saw nothing but sincerity, and for the first time, she allowed herself to hope. Before she could answer, the sound of gravel crunching snapped them both to attention. A truck pulled into the lot. Ellie's body stiffened till the driver stepped out. It wasn't Cole, it was Sheriff Taylor, an older man. Kind eyes, wide shoulders, and the kind of voice that could settle a room without shouting. "Morning, Ellie," he said, removing his hat. "Morning, Sheriff," she replied cautiously. "Mind if I come in?" "Sure." He walked inside, nodded at David politely, then turned his attention back to Ellie. "Got a few calls last night," he said. "Heard Cole raised his voice in the diner. Heard you handled yourself real well." Ellie didn't say anything. Sheriff Taylor looked down, thumbs hooked in his belt. "Just so you know, I had a talk with him this morning. Gave him a warning. Told him next time he so much as walks toward you, it won't be words we're exchanging." Ellie blinked. "You did. People like Cole get away with too much for too long, but not anymore." A lump rose in her throat. "Thank you." He tipped his hat. "You let me know if he bothers you again." As the sheriff left, Ellie turned to David, overwhelmed. "You okay?" he asked. She nodded slowly. "Yeah, I think I really am." She walked over to the bench and picked up the gold ring. Her mother's hand slid it back onto her finger. This time, it wasn't out of fear. It was a symbol of everything she had survived, everything she was building. Her past hadn't disappeared, but her future had just begun. 2 months passed. The rusted sign that once read Carter's Garage had been taken down, replaced with a fresh wooden board painted in bold black letters. Ellie's Auto and Training. It wasn't flashy. It didn't need to be. Inside, the place had changed more than anyone thought possible in just 8 weeks. New tools lined clean shelves. The cracked concrete floor had been sealed and painted. The old office was now a small but cozy waiting room, complete with fresh coffee and a wall covered in framed photos of girls working on cars who'd never touched a wrench before Ellie took them in. She had 2 apprentices now. Lena, a 16-year-old high school dropout who could name every engine part blindfolded. And Maddie, barely 20, with scars from a past she didn't talk about, but hands steady enough to replace a clutch in under 2 hours. The shop hummed, with life, with music, with laughter, and for the first time in years, Ellie did to. David had helped get the grant approved. Quietly, he refused to take credit, even when the press release mentioned his name. Instead, he showed up every few days, wearing old jeans instead of suits, helping stock inventory or install new shelves. He didn't hover, he didn't push, he was just there, always there. "You ever going back to Chicago?" Ellie asked one afternoon, as they sorted through a shipment of parts. David looked up from a box of spark plugs. "Eventually, maybe." "Why?" Ellie wiped her hands and leaned against the counter. "You're starting to look more like a mechanic than a financial consultant." He chuckled. "That bad, huh?" "No," she said, smiling softly. "That good." They stood in silence for a moment, the kind of silence that didn't feel awkward anymore, the kind of silence that meant comfort. "You happy?" he asked, voice low. Ellie looked around the garage, at Lena wiping grease off her cheek, at Maddie lowering an engine hoist like a pro, at the gold ring still on her finger not as a chain to her past, but as a badge of survival. "I'm getting there," she said. David nodded, understanding. Later that day, Ellie stepped out to the porch of the shop just as the sun began to dip below the trees. The sky was brushed with pink and orange, casting long shadows on the gravel lot. She took a deep breath and exhaled slowly. Everything smelled like oil and possibility. She didn't hear David walk up behind her until he was beside her, holding a paper cup of coffee from the diner. "You never let me buy you dinner after that night," he said. "I thought we agreed burgers didn't count as dinner," she replied. He grinned. "Then let me try again. Tonight, somewhere quiet. You pick." Ellie hesitated. She looked down at her hands, still stained from the day's work, and back at him. "David, you've done so much already. I don't want to confuse things." He didn't flinch. "You're not confusing anything. I'm not trying to rescue you, Ellie. I never was. I just like being around someone who's not afraid to be exactly who she is." Ellie smiled, but there was a hint of fear behind it. "I've never had that before," she said. "A connection without control." David nodded. "Then maybe that's what makes this worth exploring." She looked at him, really looked at him, not the businessman who drove a Mustang, not the man who saw her at her lowest, but someone who stayed, not because she needed saving, but because he saw her as an equal. "Okay," she said quietly. Dinner. They stood there, side by side, watching the last light of the day spill over the rooftop stop behind them. The garage glowed from the inside, like a lighthouse built not to warn people away but to guide them home. Ellie had rebuilt engines, brakes, carburetors, but what she was building now, this garage, this family, this life, was the most important thing of all, and maybe, just maybe, she was starting to believe she deserved it. The new shop had been open for nearly 3 months when the first letter arrived. It was handwritten, no return address, but Ellie knew the handwriting before she even opened it. She stood at the edge of the workbench, eyes scanning the lines of ink that tried to pull her back into the darkness. She'd finally left. Cole's words were sweet. On the surface, regret, promises, a single line that chilled her more than any curse. "I still think about us." Ellie folded the letter without finishing it. She walked out back, struck a match, and watched it curl into flame in the metal bin behind the garage. She didn't cry. She didn't shake. She just let it burn. She walked back inside, brushing her hands off like she'd taken out the trash, because that's all it was, no garbage from a life she no longer lived in. When David arrived that evening, he found Ellie on the floor of the waiting room, laughing with Lena and Maddie as they argued over whose rebuilt carburetor sounded better. There was a joy in her that ran deeper now and not borrowed. She looked up when she saw him, her smile softening. "You're late." "Blame the donut guy," David said, holding up a box. "Apparently, the secret to life is maple glaze." Maddie grabbed a donut with a cheer. "He's not wrong." David sat beside Ellie on the floor, the two of them surrounded by smudged manuals, greasy rags, and the girls they'd helped lift up. It wasn't glamorous, but it felt like everything that mattered. Later, after the shop closed and the lights dimmed, Ellie walked out front with David. The moon was bright overhead, casting silver over the gravel lot and onto the fresh wood sign with her name. "I think I'm finally free," she said quietly. You always were, David replied. You just had to see it. She looked at him, her expression unreadable for a moment. You've seen me through a lot, David, more than I thought anyone would, and I'll keep showing up, Ellie, even when you don't ask. Her heart ached in a new way, a soft, vulnerable way. She didn't want to be rescued, but maybe, just maybe, it was okay to be loved. I've got something for you, David added, reaching into his pocket. Ellie's eyes narrowed. If it's a diamond ring, I'm throwing it into the oil drum. David chuckled. It's not. Promise. He pulled out a small velvet pouch and handed it to her. Ellie opened it cautiously and paused. Inside was a ring, but not gold, not silver. It was steel, handcrafted, rough on the edges but beautifully shaped. The kind of ring you'd make for someone who knew the value of grit more than glitter. Engraved. Inside, in tiny, steady script, were the words, "Fixed from the inside." Ellie stared at it, her breath catching. I made it with a friend, David explained. No expectations, no pressure. I just thought, maybe it could be a reminder of how far you've come, and how far you still can go. Ellie turned it over in her palm. It's perfect. You don't have to wear it, David said quickly. It's not a proposal, just a symbol. Ellie smiled, her eyes misty. I want to wear it. She pulled the pouch's drawstring closed, and, for a moment, said nothing. Then, quietly, she reached for his hand. Not out of fear, not because she needed him, but because she wanted to. They stood under the moonlight, hands clasped, in front of the shop she built from the ashes of her past, and for the first time in her life, Ellie Carter didn't feel broken, or running, or small. She felt whole, not because someone saved her, but because she saved herself and allowed someone to walk beside her when she no longer had to walk alone.